A millionaire said he would marry her only to have children. He still loved his ex, and after the children were born, he planned to divorce her. But after the birth of the twins, he begged for her love. A great love story for a great family. Don't skip chapter 9. There's a beautiful surprise for my family at the end of chapter. And Rob Brink signed his marriage certificate, the way other men signed business contracts, with a steady hand and an absent heart. The ink was still wet when Rob realized what he'd done. Not the marriage itself, that had been inevitable, a requirement his family had pressed upon him with the weight of generations. The Brink name needed heirs. The legacy demanded continuation. At 34, he'd exhausted every excuse, dodged every suitable introduction, until his father delivered the ultimatum with characteristic bluntness over breakfast one morning. You'll marry, or you'll watch everything we built go to your cousin. So Rob had chosen Lisa Young. She stood beside him now in her ivory dress, a vision of quiet elegance that would photograph beautifully for the society pages. Lisa was intelligent, a literature professor with kind eyes and a smile that never quite reached them. She was composed in a way that suggested she'd learned early how to hide her feelings. She was practical, unburdened by romantic illusions, and most importantly, she understood the terms. He'd laid them out over dinner at an expensive restaurant where the lighting was dim enough to hide the absence of warmth in his proposal. I need a wife, he'd said, no preamble, no pretense. Someone to build a family with, children to carry the name forward. I can offer you security, comfort, respect. What I can't offer is love. He'd expected her to throw her wine in his face. Instead, Lisa had set down her fork with careful precision and asked, why? Because my heart is already gone, he'd answered honestly. Given away to someone who didn't want it. I have nothing left to offer but the practical things. She'd studied him for a long moment, her dark eyes searching his face for something he couldn't name. Then she'd nodded once. I understand. And after the children are born? We'll part ways civilly. You'll be provided for always. The children will have both parents in their lives, but the marriage itself will end. Then I accept, she'd said, and he'd wondered why she would agree to something so cold, so transactional. He didn't ask. Perhaps he didn't want to know. Now, standing at the altar of the cathedral his family had attended for generations, Rob watched the officiant's mouth move without hearing the words. The vows were traditional, heavy with promises he knew he wouldn't keep. Love, honor, cherish. He said them anyway, his voice steady and empty. When it was Lisa's turn, he finally looked at her. Really looked. She was beautiful in a way he hadn't let himself notice before. Not the flashy, demanding beauty of the woman who'd destroyed him, but something quieter, stronger. Her hand trembled slightly as she held his, and he felt a flicker of something that might have been guilt. She deserved better than this, better than him. But she'd agreed, and he was too hollowed out to care about nobility. I now pronounce you husband and wife. The kiss was brief, appropriate, meaningless. The guests applauded. His mother wept tears of relief. Lisa's family smiled with an uncertainty that suggested they knew something was wrong, but couldn't name it. The reception blurred together in a parade of champagne toasts and congratulations. Rob shook hands, accepted well wishes, played the role of grateful groom. Lisa did the same, her performance flawless. They moved through the crowd like actors who'd rehearsed their parts, but never connected to the material. You look happy, his best friend remarked, though his tone suggested he knew better. I'm married, Rob replied, which wasn't an answer. When they danced, Lisa fit perfectly in his arms, the right height, the right rhythm, everything technically correct. But his mind wandered to a different woman, a different dance, a different life he'd almost had. The memory was acid in his chest. You're thinking about her, Lisa said quietly, and Rob flinched. I'm sorry. Don't be. You warned me. Her voice held no accusation, which somehow made it worse. I went in with open eyes. Why did you agree to this? The question escaped before he could stop it. Lisa's smile was sad and knowing. Because sometimes we accept what's offered, even when we deserve more. Because I'm tired of being alone. Because maybe I hoped that time might change things. It won't, he said, and hated himself for the honesty. I know, she whispered, but hope is stubborn. The song ended. They separated. Rob watched her walk away toward her family, her posture perfect, her heartbreak invisible to everyone but him. The night wore on. Guests departed with wishes for happiness and fertility. Rice was thrown. Photographs were taken. Lisa smiled in every single one, and Rob wondered if anyone else noticed that her eyes remained empty. Finally, they were driven to the estate that would be their home, a sprawling mansion that had housed Brinks for generations. The driver opened the door. Lisa stepped out first, gazing up at the imposing facade with an expression Rob couldn't read. It's beautiful, she said. It's a museum, Rob corrected. Cold and full of ghosts. She turned to look at him. Then we'll be right at home. The staff had prepared the master suite, candles lit, rose petals scattered, champagne chilling. All the romantic trappings for a wedding night that would be anything but. Rob stood in the doorway, suddenly exhausted by the charade. I can't do this, he said. Not tonight. Not like this. Lisa's relief was visible. Thank you. I'll take one of the guest rooms. Rob, she stopped him as he turned to leave. I just need to know one thing. The woman you love, the one who took your heart. What was her name? He hesitated, then decided she deserved at least this truth. Delia. And if she came back tomorrow, asked you to leave me, would you? The question hung between them like a blade. Rob met her eyes and gave her the only honest answer he had. I don't know. Lisa nodded slowly, absorbing the blow. Then I know where I stand. He left her there, alone on their wedding night, and walked to a guest room at the far end of the hall. The bed was cold. The room was silent. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the woman he'd married and the one he couldn't forget. Down the hall, Lisa unpacked her suitcase with mechanical precision. She hung her wedding dress in the closet, knowing she'd never wear it again. She removed her jewelry piece by piece. When she found the silver frame with their wedding photo, the one the photographer had captured during their first dance, she stared at it for a long moment. Two people smiling, two people touching, two people who might as well have been strangers. She placed it face down in the drawer. Tomorrow would begin the real marriage, the one stripped of pretense and illusion, the one where she would play house with a man who loved a ghost. She'd agreed to this with open eyes, told herself she could handle it, convinced herself that maybe he would change. But lying alone in the massive bed, in the massive house, in the massive silence of her new life, Lisa Young, now Lisa Brink, allowed herself one moment of weakness. She cried, not for what she'd lost, but for what she'd never had. Not for the love that had ended, but for the love that would never begin. And when the tears finally stopped, she made herself a promise. She would be kind. She would be strong. She would build the family they'd agreed upon. She would give him children and ask nothing in return, but she wouldn't let herself hope anymore. Hope, she'd learned, was just another word for heartbreak. She unpacked her suitcase alone that night, and when she found the silver frame with their wedding photo, she placed it face down in the drawer. Chapter 2. The Architecture of Silence. Their home became a museum of almost touched, almost spoken, almost loved. The morning after their wedding, Lisa woke to an empty house. Not empty of people. The staff moved through the halls like well-trained shadows, silent and efficient. But empty of Rob. His side of the bed hadn't been slept in because he'd never come to it. The guest room down the hall told the story of where he'd spent their first night as husband and wife. She found a note on the kitchen counter, his handwriting sharp and hurried. Had to leave early. Coffee is ready. Ooh, not good morning, not see you tonight, just a fact. Delivered like a weather report. Lisa poured herself coffee and stood at the window overlooking grounds so vast she couldn't see where they ended. This was her life now. This silence, this distance, this careful choreography of two people sharing space but never truly meeting. The weeks that followed established a rhythm as predictable as it was hollow. Rob left before dawn. She'd hear his footsteps on the stairs, the soft click of the front door, the engine of his car fading into the distance. By the time she came downstairs, he'd be gone, leaving behind only the faint scent of his cologne and an empty coffee mug in the sink. So Lisa began waking earlier. She learned how he took his coffee. Black, no sugar, exactly 3/4 full so it wouldn't spill in the car. She learned he preferred his shirts pressed with extra starch, that he sorted his mail into 3 piles before reading any of it, that he ran his hand through his hair when he was stressed. She learned him the way an archaeologist learns ancient civilizations, through careful observation of artifacts and patterns, never direct contact. She set his coffee out every morning exactly how he liked it. She made sure his clothes were ready. She left small notes with his things. Have a good day, or don't forget your meeting. Tiny attempts at connection that he never acknowledged. But he noticed. She could tell because the coffee was always gone, the notes always touched, even if never answered. Mrs. Brink, the housekeeper, said one afternoon, finding Lisa reorganizing the study for the 3rd time that week. You don't need to do all this. We have staff. I know, Lisa said, dusting a shelf that didn't need dusting. I just want to be useful. The housekeeper's expression was kind and pitying. You're his wife, not his servant. But what was a wife without a husband? What was a marriage without connection? Lisa didn't have an answer, so she just smiled and kept cleaning. Rob returned after dark, usually around 10 or 11. She'd wait, telling herself she was just reading or watching television, not listening for the sound of his car. When he finally came through the door, she'd look up with a smile that felt more like a mask every time. How was your day? Fine. Yours? Good. And that would be it. The extent of their daily conversation, delivered like strangers in an elevator. Some nights, he'd sit in his study until she fell asleep. Other nights, he'd go straight to his room. On rare occasions, he'd stop by the living room where she waited. You don't have to wait up, he'd say. I know, she'd reply. I wanted to. He'd nod, uncomfortable with her kindness, and disappear upstairs. They had dinner together 3 times a week, a schedule suggested by his mother, who'd started asking uncomfortable questions about their marriage. Those dinners were performances, carefully staged productions where they discussed safe topics like the house, the weather, plans for the holidays. We should host something, Lisa suggested one evening, pushing food around her plate. Your family, maybe. A dinner party. If you want, Rob said, not looking up. I thought it might be nice to have people here, make it feel more like a home. He finally met her eyes. It's not going to become a home, Lisa. It's just a place we live. The words landed like stones. She nodded, swallowed, forced brightness into her voice. Of course. I just meant, I know what you meant. He stood, dinner half finished. I have work to do. She ate the rest of her meal alone, and when she cleared the table, she noticed he'd barely touched his food. The staff whispered. Lisa pretended not to hear, but the words filtered through anyway. Strange marriage, this one. He treats her like a guest. Poor thing, all alone in this big house. Her mother called every week, her voice bright with forced cheer. How's married life, sweetheart? Wonderful, Lisa lied, staring at the empty seat across from her. Rob is very kind. Kind? Her mother caught the word. Not loving? Not happy? He's good to me, Mom. That's what matters. But lying to her mother was easier than admitting the truth. She'd married a ghost of a man who was haunted by someone else. The nights were the hardest. Rob would come to her room twice a week, punctual and predictable as a doctor's appointment. He'd knock softly. She'd say, come in, even though it was his house, his right. They'd fulfill the clinical requirements of their arrangement, creating the children they'd agreed upon. performing the biological necessities of their contract. It was mechanical, transactional, void of everything that should make such moments meaningful. He was gentle, at least, considerate in the way one might be considerate of a stranger. He'd ask if she was comfortable. She'd say yes, even when she wasn't. They'd finish and he'd leave almost immediately, mumbling something about needing to shower or work or sleep. He never stayed. She never asked him to. Afterward, Lisa would lie in the dark, feeling more alone than she ever had before marriage. At least when she'd been single, the loneliness had been honest. This was something worse, the loneliness of lying next to someone who would never see you, touch you with intention, want you for more than function. One night, after he'd left her room, with his usual quick exit, she finally broke. She cried into her pillow, muffling the sound so no one would hear. She cried for the girl she'd been, who believed in love. She cried for the woman she'd become, who'd settled for this hollow imitation. She cried because she'd known what she was agreeing to, and somehow it was still worse than she'd imagined. The next morning, she woke early and made his coffee exactly how he liked it, because that's what she did. That's who she'd become. 3 months into their marriage, his family threw them an anniversary dinner. Small, intimate, just close relatives who all pretended not to notice the chasm between bride and groom. "You two look so happy," Rob's aunt cooed, touching Lisa's hand. "We are," Lisa said, smiling until her face ached. Under the table, Rob's leg rested miles from hers. He laughed at jokes, told stories, played the perfect host. But he never touched her, never looked at her with anything beyond polite acknowledgement. When they got home that night, Lisa poured herself wine and stood in the kitchen, still wearing her dress, still holding the smile that felt carved into her face. Rob loosened his tie, heading for the stairs. "That went well, did it?" The question came out sharper than she intended. He paused, turned. "What's wrong?" "Nothing, everything, I don't know." She set down her glass. "Do you even see me, Rob? Or am I just furniture to you?" His jaw tightened. "That's not fair." "Fair?" She laughed, bitter and tired. "You want to talk about fair? I make your coffee. I prepare your meals. I wait up for you, even though you've never asked me to. I smile at your family and pretend we're happy. I let you into my bed and you leave before I can even catch my breath. I'm trying, Rob, I'm trying so hard, and you look at me like I'm an obligation." "You knew what this was," he said quietly. "I told you from the beginning." "I know." The fight drained out of her. "I know you did. And that's the worst part. I have no right to be upset. I agreed to this. But knowing something intellectually and living it are different things. I didn't know it would feel like drowning." Rob's expression flickered with something, guilt maybe, or discomfort. "Lisa, forget it." She waved her hand. "I'm just tired. Too much wine. I'll be fine in the morning." She walked past him, heading upstairs to the master bedroom that had never felt like hers. Behind her she heard him sigh, but he didn't follow, didn't call her back, didn't do anything but return to his study, where he'd sit alone, working or pretending to work, until morning came. On their 3-month anniversary, Rob worked late. Lisa ate dinner alone, and when she blew out the candle she'd foolishly lit, she made a wish she knew would never come true. Chapter 3, The Ghost, returns. The past arrived in a scarlet dress and a smile that knew all of Rob's weaknesses. The charity gala was the kind of event Rob normally avoided. Too much small talk, too many cameras, too many people who wanted something from him. But his mother had insisted, and Lisa had agreed to go, wearing a midnight blue gown that made her look like she belonged in paintings rather than his hollow life. They arrived separately, which had become their norm. Lisa with a forced smile, Rob with practiced indifference. They stood together for photographs, her hand resting lightly on his arm, both of them performing for an audience that believed in their lie. "You look beautiful," he said, because it was true and because it cost him nothing to say. "Thank you," she replied, and he heard the sadness underneath the gratitude. The ballroom was crowded. Music flowing from a live orchestra, champagne circulating on silver trays. Rob guided Lisa through the crowd, introducing her to people whose names he'd forget by morning. She was gracious, charming even, better at this than he was. "I'll get us drinks," he said, needing space from the suffocating press of bodies. That's when he saw her. Delia Hart stood near the bar, a vision in scarlet, her dark hair cascading over bare shoulders, her smile as devastating as he remembered. She was laughing at something a man beside her said, but her eyes were scanning the room, hunting. They found Rob. The world tilted. 5 years collapsed into nothing. He was back in the apartment they'd shared, watching her pack her bags, listening to her explain why he wasn't enough, why his love wasn't enough, why she was choosing someone else, someone wealthier, more connected, more everything Rob had failed to be. "I need more than what you can give me," she'd said, her voice soft and final. "I'm sorry, Rob, but I have to think about my future." She'd destroyed him, systematically, completely, without mercy. He'd spent 2 years rebuilding himself into something harder, colder, less vulnerable. He'd convinced himself he was over her. But now, watching her walk toward him through the crowd, he realized he'd been lying. Rob Brink. Her voice was honey and smoke. "It's been a long time. Delia." His voice came out steady, which felt like a miracle. "I didn't know you'd be here. I'm back in town. Divorced, actually." She said it casually, sipping champagne, her eyes never leaving his face. "Turns out money isn't everything. Who knew?" The irony wasn't lost on him. "I'm sorry to hear that." But driving home, her hands shook on the steering wheel. The test results and ultrasound photos sat in her purse like evidence of a crime she'd committed. What had she done? What was she doing? Bringing children into a marriage that was already dead, already buried under lies and affairs and mutual indifference. She thought of her own childhood, warm and full of laughter, her parents still holding hands after decades together. She'd wanted that for herself, for her children. Instead, she was creating the opposite. By the time she reached home, she'd made a decision. She'd tell Rob tonight. Maybe the babies would change things. Maybe the reality of fatherhood would wake him up, make him see what they could build together. Maybe. Hope that stubborn, stupid thing flickered back to life. She prepared his favorite meal, roasted chicken with herbs, garlic potatoes, fresh vegetables. She set the table beautifully, lit candles, put on a dress that still fit her changing body. She waited. Rob came home late, looking distracted and disheveled in a way that told her exactly where he'd been. "You're home," she said, trying to keep the hurt from her voice. "Yeah." He barely glanced at the table. "What's all this?" "I made dinner." "I thought we could eat together, actually talk." He checked his phone, always his phone, and sighed. "Lisa, I'm really tired. Can we just—" "I'm pregnant." The words came out blunt, graceless, nothing like she'd planned. But she couldn't hold them anymore, couldn't wait for the perfect moment that would never come. Rob froze. Slowly he looked up from his phone. "What?" "I'm pregnant. 10 weeks. Twins, actually. 2 babies." She watched his face carefully, looking for something. Joy, fear, connection, anything. Instead, she saw surprise, then calculation, then a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "That's wonderful news," he said, his voice flat and automatic. "Is it?" "Of course." He crossed to her, and for a moment she thought he might embrace her, might show some genuine emotion. Instead, he kissed her forehead, brief, distant, meaningless. "Congratulations." "Congratulations." She stepped back, staring at him. "Rob, we're having children. Doesn't that mean anything to you?" "It means everything. It means we fulfilled our agreement." He was already checking his phone again. "This is good. This is what we planned. We planned a family, not a transaction. Isn't that what this has always been?" He met her eyes finally, and she saw nothing there. No warmth, no connection, just empty acknowledgement. "I told you from the beginning what this was. Why are you acting surprised?" "Because I'm human," she said, her voice breaking. "Because I'm carrying your children, and you're looking at me like I'm reporting quarterly earnings. Because even in a loveless marriage, there should be something, some shred of decency or care or basic humanity. His jaw tightened. I do care. Then show me, please, just once, show me that I'm more than an obligation to you. For a moment, just a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Guilt, maybe, or recognition. But then his phone buzzed and his attention shifted. He glanced at the screen and his expression softened in a way it never did for her. Delia. It had to be Delia. I need to take this, he said, already walking toward his study. Rob, we'll talk about the pregnancy later. Make doctor's appointments. Figure out what needs to be done. He paused at the doorway. Really, Lisa, it's great news. I'm happy about it. But the door closed behind him before she could respond, and she heard his voice turn warm and intimate as he answered Delia's call. Lisa stood alone in the dining room, candles flickering on the carefully set table, food growing cold, her hands resting on a belly that held two lives she already loved more than anything, and she understood, finally, with crushing clarity. She was bringing children into a home without love. She was creating a family with a man who barely saw her. She was building a future on foundations that had already crumbled. She sat down at the table and ate dinner alone, tears falling silently into her plate. When Rob emerged from his study 2 hours later, she was still there, staring at the cold food and melted candles. You should get some rest, he said, awkward and uncomfortable. Pregnancy is hard on the body. I know, she whispered. He hesitated, then left her there. She heard his footsteps on the stairs, the sound of his bedroom door closing, the finality of another night alone. That night, Lisa held her stomach and whispered to her unborn children, I'll love you enough for both of us, because she already knew their father wouldn't. Chapter 5. The Breaking Point. Strength has a limit, and Lisa reached hers on a Tuesday afternoon, when her body finally surrendered to the heartbreak her mind had been carrying alone. Lisa's pregnancy progressed in isolation. The morning sickness evolved into something constant and draining. Her body changed in ways that should have been celebrated, but instead felt like evidence of her loneliness. She bought maternity clothes alone, attended doctor's appointments alone, set up the nursery alone. Rob came to exactly 2 prenatal visits, both times arriving late and leaving early, his mind clearly elsewhere. He'd nod politely as the doctor explained the twins' development, ask perfunctory questions about Lisa's health, and check his phone whenever he thought no one was looking. Your husband seems busy, the doctor commented after the second visit, her tone carefully neutral. He is, Lisa replied, which was true in the worst possible way. The nursery became her refuge. She spent hours there, painting walls a soft cream color, assembling 2 cribs that wobbled under her inexperienced hands, folding tiny clothes that still smelled new and hopeful. She talked to her babies constantly, telling them about the world they'd be born into, making promises she hoped she could keep. You'll have each other, she whispered, her hands on her growing belly. Even if everything else falls apart, you'll have each other. Rob barely acknowledged the pregnancy beyond the practicalities. He transferred money for her expenses, asked occasionally if she needed anything, stayed in his study or away from home entirely. The affair with Delia escalated in proportion to Lisa's pregnancy. He stopped even trying to hide it now. Lipstick on his collar, unfamiliar perfume, late nights that turned into early mornings. He'd come home looking guilty and satisfied, and Lisa would pretend not to notice. One night, Delia called the house phone. Lisa answered, her belly heavy with 6 months of pregnancy. Is Rob there? Delia's voice was sharp, entitled, the voice of a woman who didn't care about the wife. He's not home yet. Tell him I called. Tell him it's urgent. Of course, Lisa said softly. May I ask who's calling? A pause. Then, he'll know. The line went dead. Lisa sat with the phone in her hand, staring at nothing, feeling something crack inside her chest. The other woman was calling their home, demanding her husband's attention, and Lisa, pregnant, tired, alone, was reduced to taking messages like a secretary, When Rob came home an hour later, she was waiting in the kitchen. "Delia called for you." His face paled. "Lisa, she said it was urgent. I told her you'd call back." She kept her voice steady, emotionless. "She knows about the house phone now. Should I expect more calls? I'll talk to her. Will you?" Lisa laughed, bitter and exhausted. "Or will you just keep doing what you've been doing? Sneaking around, lying, pretending I don't exist? This isn't the time." "When is the time, Rob? After the babies are born? After you've gotten what you wanted from me? When exactly do I get to matter?" He ran his hand through his hair, stressed and cornered. "You're being emotional. I'm being pregnant and abandoned." She stood, one hand supporting her lower back. "Delia wants you to leave me. That's what she called about, isn't it? She's giving you an ultimatum." The silence confirmed everything. "And?" Lisa pressed. "What did you tell her?" "I told her I needed time to figure things out." "Figure out what?" "We had an agreement, Rob. Children, then divorce. You're just moving up the timeline. Why not admit it?" "Because it's not that simple anymore." "Why not?" He gestured helplessly at her belly. "Because you're pregnant. Because I can't just leave you like this. So you're staying out of guilt?" She felt tears coming and hated herself for them. "That's what's keeping you here. Obligation to your unborn children." "What else did you expect?" The question hung between them like poison. "Nothing," she said finally. "I expected nothing, and you've delivered exactly that. Congratulations." She left him standing in the kitchen, climbed the stairs slowly, her body heavy with more than just pregnancy weight. Her sister called the next morning, concerned because Lisa had missed their weekly lunch. "I'm fine," Lisa lied. "Just tired." "You don't sound fine. You sound exhausted. Are you eating? Sleeping? Is Rob helping?" "Rob is busy." "Too busy for his pregnant wife?" Lisa closed her eyes against the tears. "It's complicated." "Then uncomplicate it. Talk to him. Demand more. You're carrying his children, for God's sake. He should be taking care of you." But demanding required energy Lisa didn't have. Fighting required hope she'd lost. Instead, she just moved through her days like a ghost in her own life. The day it happened, Lisa was in the nursery. She'd been hanging curtains, standing on a small step stool, despite knowing she probably shouldn't. But the nursery needed to be perfect. Her babies deserved perfect, even if nothing else in their lives would be. The dizziness came suddenly. One moment she was reaching for the curtain rod. The next, the room tilted. She didn't remember falling. Elena, the housekeeper, found her 20 minutes later. She'd been bringing up laundry when she heard a thud from the nursery, followed by silence. "Mrs. Brink?" Elena called, pushing open the door. Lisa lay crumpled on the floor, one hand still reaching toward the curtains, her face pale against the cream carpet. The step stool had tipped over beside her. "Oh God, Mrs. Brink!" Elena dropped the laundry and ran to her, checking for a pulse with shaking hands. "Stay with me. Please stay with me." She called emergency services, then Rob, her voice high with panic. Rob was at lunch with Delia when his phone rang. "I need to take this," he told her, seeing the house number on the screen. "Can it wait?" Delia was irritated. She'd been pressing him about leaving Lisa, about starting their life together, about choosing her finally and completely. "It's the house." "So?" "Your housekeeper can handle whatever it is." But something in Rob's gut twisted. He answered, "What is it?" "Mr. Brink, it's Elena. It's your wife." She collapsed in the nursery. "The ambulance is coming. She's breathing, but she won't wake up." "The babies." Rob was standing before Elena finished. "I'm on my way." "What's wrong?" Delia demanded. Lisa collapsed. "I have to go. Rob, you always have to go. When are you going to choose me?" He stared at her. This woman he'd destroyed his marriage for. This woman he'd convinced himself was worth the betrayal. And suddenly she looked different. Not beautiful. Not alluring. Just selfish and shallow and completely wrong. Not now. Delia. He left her sitting there, abandoned mid-meal, and drove to the hospital with his heart hammering in a way he didn't recognize. Fear. Real, genuine, bone-deep fear. The hospital was cold and bright and smelled like antiseptic. A nurse directed him to a room where Lisa lay hooked to monitors, her face so pale she looked like a ghost. Two separate monitors tracked heartbeats, the twins still alive, still fighting. "Mr. Brink," a doctor approached. "Your wife experienced a severe stress-related collapse. Her blood pressure is dangerously high. The pregnancy is putting enormous strain on her body, but there are signs of severe emotional distress as well. Will she be all right?" Physically, we believe so. But Mr. Brink, I have to be frank with you. Your wife is carrying twins while under extreme stress. If this continues, we could lose the babies or lose her. She needs rest, peace, support. Whatever is causing this level of anxiety needs to stop." Rob stood in the hospital corridor, watching through the window as Lisa lay pale and fragile, with monitors tracking 2 heartbeats and 1 breaking heart. And he wondered when he'd become a man he didn't recognize. Chapter 6. The Birth of Awakening. Rob had built empires and closed billion-dollar deals, but nothing prepared him for the moment he held his children and realized he'd been living someone else's life. Lisa woke in the hospital to find Rob asleep in the chair beside her bed. It was wrong somehow, seeing him there, his tie loosened, his hair disheveled, dark circles under his eyes. He looked younger in sleep, more vulnerable, almost like someone who cared. She shifted slightly and he woke immediately. "You're awake." Relief flooded his face. "How do you feel?" "Like I fell," she said, her voice scratchy. Then panic seized her. "The babies are fine. Strong heartbeats. The doctors are monitoring them constantly." He leaned forward. "But Lisa, you can't keep doing this to yourself. The stress is dangerous." She wanted to laugh. The stress, as if it was some abstract force and not the direct result of his betrayal. His abandonment, his choice to love someone else. "I'll try to relax," she said instead, too tired to fight. The doctors kept her for observation. Rob stayed the entire time, cancelling whatever he'd had planned, ignoring the constant buzzing of his phone. Delia probably, demanding explanations, demanding attention, demanding everything he'd been giving her freely while his wife nearly died. "You should go," Lisa said on the second day. "I know you have things to do. Nothing's more important than this. Since when?" The question landed like an accusation. Rob flinched but didn't argue. What could he say? That he'd suddenly remembered she existed? That guilt had finally broken through his selfish fog? On the third day, the doctors delivered news that changed everything. "Mrs. Brink, I'm afraid we need to induce labor," the lead obstetrician said, her expression serious. "Your blood pressure isn't stabilizing, and we're concerned about both you and the babies. They're developed enough to survive outside the womb, and at this point, the safest option is to deliver them now." Now. Lisa's hand went to her belly. "But I'm only at 34 weeks. I know this isn't what you planned, but your body is under severe stress, and continuing the pregnancy could be dangerous for all 3 of you." Rob reached for Lisa's hand. The first time he'd voluntarily touched her in months. "Whatever keeps you safe." She looked at their joined hands, his holding hers with a grip that felt almost desperate. "All right." Labor started slowly, then accelerated into pain that eclipsed everything else. Hours blurred together in a haze of contractions, monitors beeping, nurses speaking in calm tones that belied the urgency in their movements. Rob stayed. Through all of it, he stayed. He held her hand when the pain peaked. He wiped sweat from her forehead. He whispered encouragement that sounded like prayers. Lisa was too exhausted to question it, too focused on the overwhelming work of bringing her children into the world. "You're doing beautifully," he said at one point, and she almost believed he meant it. "I'm scared," she admitted, squeezing his hand hard enough to hurt. "I know, but you're the strongest person I've ever met. You can do this." The word surprised her so much she almost stopped pushing. When the first baby arrived, a boy, small and red and perfect, Lisa heard Rob make a sound she'd never heard from him before. Something between a gasp and a sob. "It's a boy," the nurse announced, placing the tiny body on Lisa's chest for a brief moment before taking him to be examined. "He's beautiful," Rob whispered, his voice thick. Then the second baby came, a girl, even smaller than her brother, crying with fierce determination. "A girl," the nurse said, smiling. "And she's got a strong voice." They cleaned both babies while Lisa lay exhausted and trembling. Rob stood between the warming tables, watching the nurses work, his face a mask of wonder and terror. When they finally wrapped the twins and brought them to Lisa, she was crying. "Here's your son," the nurse said gently, placing the baby in her arms. He was so small, so perfect. Dark hair, eyes barely open, fingers curled into tiny fists. Lisa looked down at him and felt her entire world shift. "Hi, baby," she whispered. "I'm your mama." Then they brought her daughter, and Lisa cradled both of them, one in each arm, and understood with absolute clarity that she would die for these children. She would endure anything for them. She would survive this broken marriage, this heartbreak, this impossible situation, because they needed her to. "Would you like to hold them?" the nurse asked Rob. He looked terrified. "I don't know how. We'll show you." "Come on, Dad." Rob approached slowly, like the babies might break. The nurse positioned him carefully, then placed the boy in his left arm and the girl in his right. And something in Rob Brink, something that had been dead for years, suddenly came alive. His son looked up at him with unfocused eyes, and Rob felt the weight of responsibility settle onto his shoulders like armor. His daughter made a small sound, and Rob felt his heart crack open in a way he hadn't known was possible. These were his children, his blood, his legacy. But more than that, they were real, human, dependent on him entirely. And in their faces, he saw Lisa's strength, her grace, her quiet endurance of everything he'd put her through. "They're perfect," he said, and started crying. Not elegant tears, not quiet ones, but real, ugly, overwhelming sobs that he couldn't control. He stood there holding his children, crying for the first time in years, feeling the full weight of what he'd done and what he'd almost lost. "Rob?" Lisa watched him from the bed, exhausted and confused. "I'm sorry," he choked out. "God, Lisa, I'm so sorry." The nurse gently took the babies back, sensing the moment needed privacy. She settled them in their bassinets and quietly left the room. Rob sank into the chair beside Lisa's bed, his head in his hands. "I nearly killed you," he said. "All of you. The stress, the affair, the way I've treated you. The doctor said your collapse was from emotional distress. I did that. I almost destroyed our entire family because I was too much of a coward to let go of the past." Lisa said nothing. What could she say? He was right. "I ended it with Delia," he continued. "That night you collapsed. I called her from the hospital and told her it was over. She called me a coward and a fool. She's right. I'm both those things." "Why?" Lisa asked quietly. "Why now?" "Because holding them," he gestured to the bassinets where their children slept, "I finally understood what matters. Not some fantasy of what could have been with Delia. Not my pride or my pain or my stupid inability to move on. But this, you, them, the family you've been trying to build while I've been tearing it apart." "I don't know if I can forgive you," she said honestly. "I'm not asking you to. Not yet, maybe not ever." He looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time since they'd married. "I'm just asking for the chance to be better. To be the husband you deserved from the beginning. The father they need." Lisa turned her head to look at her sleeping children, her babies, the 2 lives she'd brought into the world despite everything. "What are their names?" she whispered. Rob moved to stand beside her, looking down at the twins. "Whatever you want. You've earned that right." And it was such a small thing, giving her the choice after taking so many choices away. But it felt like something. A beginning, maybe, or at least an acknowledgement of everything he'd failed to give before. "Noah," she said, looking at their son. "And Grace," Rob nodded. "Perfect." They're perfect names. That night, While Lisa slept and the twins dozed in their bassinets, Rob sat between them in the dark hospital room. He watched their tiny chests rise and fall, listened to their small sounds, and felt the full weight of fatherhood settle onto him. He'd built companies, he'd made fortunes, he'd achieved everything his family expected, but none of it had prepared him for this. None of it had taught him how to be the man his children needed, the man his wife deserved. "Tell me our story," their daughter would ask years later. And Lisa would smile, holding Rob's hand, and say, "Once upon a time, your father learned the hardest lesson, that real love isn't found in perfection. It's built in the brave choice to begin again." And in that choice, they found everything. When Lisa woke, she found him crying silently beside their children, and for a moment, she saw a crack in the armor he'd worn for so long. "What are their names?" Lisa whispered. Rob looked at her, really looked, and said, "Whatever you want. You've earned that right." It was the first true thing he'd said to her in their entire marriage. Chapter 7. The Shedding of Illusions. Repentance doesn't announce itself with trumpets. It arrives quietly, in the middle of the night, when a man finally sees the destruction he's caused. They came home from the hospital to a house that felt different. Rob carried Grace while a nurse helped Lisa with Noah. The babies were so small, still fragile from their early arrival, requiring constant care and attention. The nursery Lisa had prepared alone suddenly became the center of their universe. Rob surprised them both by refusing to leave. He'd taken leave from work, something Lisa had never known him to do. When she asked about it, he simply said, "Nothing is more important than this." The first night home, both babies woke crying at 2 a.m. Lisa struggled out of bed, her body still recovering from birth, and found Rob already in the nursery. "Go back to sleep," he said quietly, rocking Grace with an awkwardness that was somehow endearing. "I've got them. You don't know what to do. Then I'll learn." He looked at her and she saw exhaustion and determination in his eyes. "Please, Lisa, let me do this." She returned to bed but didn't sleep, listening to him move through the nursery, changing diapers with fumbling hands, speaking softly to the babies in a voice she'd never heard him use before. The days blurred into a haze of feedings and diapers and sleepless nights. Rob was present for all of it, changing Noah's diaper at 3 a.m, walking the floors with Grace when she wouldn't stop crying, learning to prepare bottles with the same focus he'd once applied to everything else. Lisa watched him with confusion and guarded hope. "You don't have to do all this," she said one afternoon, finding him reorganizing the changing table for better efficiency. "I want to." He didn't look up from his task. "I need to." "Why?" "Because I've been absent from our marriage. I can't be absent from their lives." He finally met her eyes. "And I can't keep being absent from yours." But words were easy. Lisa had learned that words meant nothing without action. The action came slowly, in small moments that accumulated like interest. Rob learned Noah liked to be held against his chest, the steady heartbeat calming him. He discovered Grace needed to be swaddled tightly to sleep. He mastered the art of the midnight bottle, the strategic diaper change, the soothing bounce that stopped tears, and he watched Lisa, really watched her. He watched her feed Noah with infinite patience, even when she was falling asleep, sitting up. He watched her sing to Grace in a voice rough from exhaustion, but still gentle. He watched her check on the babies throughout the night, her love for them written in every careful touch, every worried glance, every sacrifice she made without hesitation. She was remarkable. How had he never seen it before? How had he looked at this woman every day and seen nothing but obligation? "You're a natural," he told her one morning, watching her juggle both babies with practiced ease. "I've had more practice than you," she said, not meeting his eyes. "I'm sorry for that. For leaving you to do all of this alone when you were pregnant." Lisa's hands stilled on Grace's tiny back. "Are you really? Or are you just feeling guilty now that they're here?" "By both," he admitted. "I'm guilty and I'm sorry, and I'm trying to figure out how to be better." Trying isn't the same as doing, Rob. I know, but it's a start. Delia called constantly. Rob's phone lit up with her name dozens of times a day. Messages piled up, each one more desperate than the last. We need to talk. You can't just end things like this. I love you. Come back to me. You're throwing away what we have for someone you don't even love. That last message made Rob stare at his phone for a long time. He was sitting in the nursery at 2 a.m, Noah sleeping against his chest. When he finally understood what he needed to do, he blocked her number. Then he deleted every message, every photo, every trace of the affair that had nearly destroyed his life. Lisa found him crying quietly in the dark, holding their son like a lifeline. "What's wrong?" She asked, alarmed. "Nothing, everything." He wiped his eyes with his free hand. "I blocked Delia's number, deleted everything. It's over." Lisa sat in the rocking chair, cradling Grace. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you deserve to know. Because I need you to know that I'm choosing this. Choosing you. Choosing them." He looked at Noah's sleeping face. "I spent the last year chasing a fantasy. A woman who left me because I wasn't enough. Who only wanted me back because she was bored with her own choices. And I destroyed my marriage for her." "You didn't have a marriage to destroy," Lisa said quietly. "Not really. We could have, if I'd tried. If I'd opened my eyes and seen what was right in front of me." He met her gaze across the nursery. "You've been trying from the beginning, haven't you? The coffee, the notes, the small kindnesses I ignored. You were trying to build something, and I was too much of a fool to see it." "I was trying to survive," she corrected. "Trying to make the best of what we had, which was nothing. Because I gave you nothing." He adjusted Noah gently. "I look at you with them, and I see everything I missed. Your strength, your grace. The way you love without reservation, even when you have every reason to hold back. Don't romanticize me, Rob. I'm not some saint. I'm just someone who refuses to let her children grow up feeling unwanted the way I made you feel." "The way I made you feel," he corrected. "I did that to you. Every day of our marriage, I made you feel invisible." Grace started fussing, and Lisa stood to walk with her. Rob watched her move through the nursery, humming softly, and felt something shift in his chest. This was his family. This woman who'd endured his worst and still showed up every day. These children who depended on him completely. This life he'd been throwing away. Delia showed up at the house 3 days later. Rob was in the kitchen preparing bottles when the doorbell rang insistently. He answered to find her on his doorstep, dressed immaculately, makeup perfect, expression desperate and angry. "You blocked me," she said, pushing past him into the house. "Delia, you can't be here." "Why not?" "Because your wife might see me." "She already knows, Rob. We both know she knows." "That's not the point." "Then what is the point?" She turned on him, eyes flashing. "You promised me we'd be together. You said you loved me." "I thought I did. I was wrong. You're only saying that because she had your babies." "But Rob, think about it. Once the initial excitement wears off, you'll remember why we work. Why we've always worked." "We don't work, Delia. We never did. You left me for someone richer. You came back because you were bored. I was convenient, an ego boost. But you never actually loved me. That's not true, isn't it?" He crossed his arms. "Tell me one thing you know about me now. Not the man I was 5 years ago. The man I am today." She opened her mouth, then closed it. "You don't know me," Rob continued. "You don't know what I care about or what I'm afraid of or what I want from life. You only know the version of me that fit your fantasy. That's not love, Delia. That's narcissism. And she loves you?" Delia gestured vaguely toward the stairs. "That woman you married for convenience. You think she loves you after everything you've done?" "No," Rob said honestly. "She doesn't, but she could have. If I'd given her reason to. If I'd been the man she deserved instead of a coward chasing ghosts. I'm not a ghost. You're not real either. What we had was never real. It was just two people trying to recapture something that wasn't worth keeping in the first place." He walked to the door and opened it. "I need you to leave, and I need you to not come back. You're really choosing her?" I'm choosing my children. I'm choosing the family we're building. I'm choosing to finally grow up and be the man I should have been all along." He held the door wider. "Goodbye, Delia." She left, furious and tearful. And Rob closed the door with a finality that felt like freedom. He returned to the kitchen to find Lisa standing in the doorway, Grace in her arms, having heard everything. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "Yes, I did." He took Grace gently, cradling her against his chest. "I can't keep hurting the woman who gave me everything." Lisa's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't give you everything. You gave me children. You gave me patience I didn't deserve. You gave me chances to be better that I wasted. You gave me grace when I earned nothing but contempt." He looked down at their daughter. "And you gave me her and him, and the possibility of becoming someone worth knowing." "Rob, I'm not asking for forgiveness," he interrupted. "I'm not asking you to love me or trust me or even like me. I'm just asking for the chance to earn those things, however long it takes." Lisa studied his face, searching for lies or manipulation. She found only exhaustion and sincerity and the first genuine emotion she'd seen in him since they'd married. "All right," she whispered. "Show me." And he did. He showed her by being present, by taking the 3 a.m. feeding without complaint, by learning to soothe Noah through colic and Grace through teething, by asking Lisa what she needed instead of assuming, by listening when she talked instead of checking his phone. Days turned into weeks. Weeks where Rob discovered that fatherhood was terrifying and exhausting and more meaningful than anything he'd ever done. Weeks where he watched Lisa pour endless love into their children despite having nothing left for herself. Weeks where his admiration shifted into something deeper, more complicated, more real than anything he'd felt for Delia. He was falling for his own wife, not because she was convenient or available, but because she was extraordinary, and he'd been too blind to see it. He began to see her not as an obligation, but as the heart that had held his family together when he had none to give. Chapter 8. The Confession of Departure. Lisa had learned to survive without love, but she refused to teach her children to do the same. The twins were 2 months old when Lisa started making plans. Rob was better now, present, helpful, genuinely engaged with their children. He'd learned their patterns, their preferences, their tiny personalities emerging more each day. He changed diapers without complaint, walked floors at midnight, read them stories even though they couldn't understand the words yet. He was becoming a good father, but Lisa couldn't forget what kind of husband he'd been. She'd lie awake at night, listening to him soothe Grace in the nursery, and feel the weight of all the months she'd endured alone, the pregnancy she'd carried while he was with another woman, the collapse that had nearly killed her and the babies, the year of marriage where she'd been invisible, worthless, nothing but a means to an end. Forgiveness, she discovered, wasn't something you could simply decide to do. It was earned slowly, if at all, and even Rob's transformation couldn't erase the scars he'd left. She started researching apartments during the twins' nap times, looking at divorce laws, consulting with lawyers quietly, carefully, making sure Rob wouldn't find out until she was ready. "I want to establish custody arrangements," she told the lawyer during a phone consultation while the babies slept. "Joint custody, nothing vindictive. I just need to know my options." "Are you sure you want to proceed?" the lawyer asked. "From what you've described, your husband seems to be making efforts." "Efforts aren't the same as change. And even if he has changed, it doesn't undo what he did." She'd stay until the twins were stronger, until they'd established feeding and sleeping routines, until she felt confident she could manage them alone in a smaller space without household staff to help. Then she'd leave. Not out of anger, though she had plenty of that, but because she couldn't teach her children that love meant accepting the bare minimum. That marriage meant coexisting without connection. That family meant performing for an audience while dying inside. Her daughter deserved to see what it looked like when a woman valued herself. Her son deserved to learn that you don't get to hurt people without consequences, even if you eventually feel bad about it. Rob noticed her distance. though he didn't understand its source. "Are you all right?" he asked one afternoon, finding her staring out the window while the twins napped. "I'm fine. Just tired. Is there something I can do? Some way I can help more?"
She almost laughed. Help more.
As if his presence now could compensate for his absence then. "I'm managing," she said instead. He lingered in the doorway, clearly wanting to say something else, but Grace started crying. And the moment passed. Lisa's sister visited and immediately sensed something wrong. "You're planning to leave him," she said. Not a question, but a statement of fact. They were in the kitchen while Rob took the twins for a walk in their double stroller, one of the many new habits he'd developed. "How did you know?" "You've got that look, like you're already gone, just waiting for your body to catch up." Her sister touched Lisa's hand. "I don't blame you. After everything he put you through. He's different now," Lisa said, needing to be fair. "Better with the babies. Present in ways he wasn't before. But I can't forget. I can't look at him without remembering how he made me feel. The affair, the coldness, the way he treated our pregnancy like an inconvenience." She wiped at sudden tears. "I keep thinking about our daughter. What if she grows up and some man treats her the way Rob treated me? Would I want her to stay? Would I tell her that his remorse makes up for his actions?" "No," her sister said softly. "You'd tell her to know her worth." "Exactly. So how can I stay and teach her the opposite?" They sat in silence, drinking coffee, while the weight of Lisa's decision settled between them. That evening, Rob found her crying beside the twins' cribs. Both babies were asleep, peaceful and perfect in their matching white onesies. Lisa stood between them, one hand on each crib rail, tears streaming silently down her face. "Lisa?" Rob approached carefully, afraid of spooking her. "What's wrong?" She didn't look at him. "I'm leaving." The words hung in the air like broken glass. "What?" "Not now, but soon. Once they're stronger. Once I've found a place and made arrangements." Her voice was steady despite the tears. "I'll be fair about custody. You can see them as much as you want. I won't take them from you." Rob felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. "Why?" She finally turned to face him. "Because I can't do this anymore. I can't live in a house with a man who destroyed me and pretend that his regret makes it okay. I'm trying to be better." "I know. And you are better. You're wonderful with the babies. You've been present and helpful and everything I needed months ago." She wiped her eyes. "But Rob, I can't teach them that love means accepting someone who hurt you just because they eventually feel bad about it." "Lisa, please, I won't show my daughter it's acceptable to be invisible," she continued, her voice gaining strength. "I won't show my son that it's acceptable to make someone feel that way. I won't build their understanding of relationships on a foundation of betrayal and convenient repentance." "So nothing I do matters," his voice broke. "All the ways I've changed, all the effort I've made, it's meaningless." "It's not meaningless. It matters for them. They deserve a good father, and you're becoming one. But Rob, you were a terrible husband. For almost our entire marriage, you treated me like an obligation, an inconvenience, something to be endured until you could be free. I was wrong. Yes, you were. And saying that doesn't undo the damage." She crossed her arms, hugging herself. "I spent a year hoping you'd see me, making your coffee, leaving notes, waiting up for you, trying desperately to build something from nothing. And you gave me nothing back. Then you had an affair with the woman who broke your heart. And you made me take messages from her while I was pregnant with your children." Rob flinched at each accusation, knowing they were all true. "Then I collapsed," Lisa continued. "Nearly died because the stress of your betrayal was literally killing me. And yes, you changed after that. But Rob, you only changed when you finally faced consequences. When you held our children and realized what you'd almost lost. What's wrong with that? People change. People grow. People change when they're forced to, not because they want to. And I can't spend the rest of my life wondering if you're only being decent because I'm the mother of your children, not because you actually value me as a person. I do value you. Now you value me now. After everything else." She turned back to the cribs. "I loved you, Rob. From the beginning, despite knowing you didn't love me back. Despite the terms of our arrangement, I hoped time would change things. That maybe you'd see me eventually. The past tense hit him like a physical blow. Loved? Loved, she confirmed. I can't love someone who hurt me that deeply, who chose someone else so completely, who only noticed me when it was almost too late. She touched Grace's tiny hand through the crib bars. I stayed because I hoped. But hope without reciprocation isn't love, Rob. It's self-destruction. And I won't destroy myself anymore. Not for you, not for anyone. What about them? He gestured desperately to the twins. They need both parents, a stable home. They'll have both parents, just not in the same house. And honestly, maybe that's better. Maybe it's better than growing up watching their mother accept scraps and calling it love. Rob wanted to argue, wanted to explain that he'd changed, that he saw her now, that he was falling for her in ways he hadn't known were possible. But looking at her face, tired and determined and already gone, he realized the truth. He was too late. He'd spent their entire marriage destroying what they could have had, and now that he finally wanted to build it, there was nothing left to build on. I don't want you to go, he said quietly. I know, but what I want has to matter too. And I want to not hurt anymore. I want to wake up and not remember how invisible I was to you. I want to look at you and not see the man who nearly destroyed me. She wiped her eyes again. Maybe someday I can, but not now, not yet. Not while everything is still so raw. How long? His voice was barely a whisper. How long until you leave? I don't know. A few more weeks maybe, once I've found the right place, made the right arrangements. I won't disappear suddenly. We'll do this properly for their sake. Noah stirred in his sleep, and they both fell silent, watching him settle. Grace's breathing was soft and steady. Two perfect, innocent lives, unaware their family was fracturing before they'd barely learned to focus their eyes. I'm sorry, Rob said, the words feeling desperately inadequate. For everything. For all of it. I'm so sorry. I know you are. Lisa's voice was gentle now, exhausted. But sorry doesn't undo the damage. It just acknowledges it. And acknowledgement isn't the same as healing. She walked past him, leaving him standing between their sleeping children, feeling more alone than he'd ever been. Down the hall, Lisa sat on her bed and let herself fall apart silently. Because loving Rob had nearly destroyed her. And staying with him, even this better version, would finish the job. She couldn't do it anymore, not for him, not for the fantasy of what they might become, not even for the children, because teaching them to accept less than they deserved was a worse gift than two homes where they were actually loved. I loved you, she whispered to the empty room, using past tense like a funeral. And Rob realized that losing her wasn't a possibility. It was happening right now, in this moment. And he was finally awake enough to feel it. Chapter 9. The Shattering of Pride. Rob Brink had never knelt for anyone, but that night he fell to his knees before the woman he'd spent a year destroying. Rob didn't sleep that night. He lay in his room, staring at the ceiling, feeling panic claw at his chest in a way he'd never experienced before. Lisa was leaving, taking the twins, taking the family he'd only just begun to understand he wanted, and it was entirely his fault. Every decision, every betrayal, every moment of coldness and cruelty had led to this. He'd built this destruction carefully, brick by brick, choice by choice, and now he was trapped in the wreckage, watching the only good thing in his life prepare to walk away. He got up before dawn and went to the nursery. Noah and Grace slept peacefully, unaware their father was unraveling. Rob sat in the rocking chair between their cribs, watching them breathe, and felt something break inside him. He'd thought he'd been protecting himself, keeping his distance, refusing to love because he'd been hurt before. But all he'd done was create new hurt, inflict new wounds, destroy someone who'd never deserved his coldness. Lisa found him there at 6 in the morning, still sitting in the dark. Have you been here all night? She asked. I couldn't sleep, She moved to check on the babies, and Rob watched her, the way she touched them gently, the love evident in every gesture. She was going to take all that love and give it to them somewhere else, somewhere without him, and he'd earned that exile completely. The next days passed in excruciating awareness. Rob watched Lisa fold tiny clothes with distant eyes, watched her research apartments on her laptop when she thought he wasn't looking, watched her build a life in her mind that didn't include him. He tried to find words, tried to figure out what to say that might change her mind, but every argument felt hollow when measured against what he'd done. "You don't love her," Delia had said, and she'd been right then. But now he watched Lisa rock Grace at 2 a.m, humming softly, and felt his chest tighten with something that might be love, or might be loss, or might be the recognition of what he'd thrown away. He saw her patience with Noah during a difficult feeding, the way she never showed frustration, even when she was exhausted. He saw her strength, carrying both babies at once when they both needed her. He saw her grace under pressure, her kindness to the staff, her gentle correction when he made mistakes with the twins. He saw her, finally, completely, devastatingly. He saw her. And it was too late. One evening, he found her in the living room, folding baby clothes, with that look on her face that said she was already gone. "Lisa," he started, then didn't know how to continue. "Yes? Don't go." She looked up at him, and her expression was kind but final. "Rob, we've been through this." "I know. He ran his hand through his hair, frustrated with his inability to articulate the panic consuming him. "Please, there has to be something I can do. Some way to fix this." "You can't fix it. It's already broken. Then let me build something new. Let me show you." "Rob, you've been showing me. For weeks now you've been different, better, present, and I've seen it all." She set down the clothes. "But seeing you be a good father doesn't erase the year you were a terrible husband." "I know that. God, I know that," he paced the room. "But people change, Lisa. People grow. Can't you give me credit for trying?" "I do give you credit. You're wonderful with the babies. You've stepped up in ways I never expected. But Rob, that doesn't mean I have to stay married to you. That doesn't mean I have to keep living with the person who nearly destroyed me." "I wasn't trying to destroy you." "But you did anyway. Intention doesn't matter when the damage is the same." He stopped pacing, facing her. "What if I told you I'm falling for you?" Or the words escaped before he could stop them. Lisa's hands stilled on the baby clothes. She looked at him for a long moment, searching his face. "Then I'd say you're only falling for me because I'm leaving, because you're finally facing the consequences of your actions, because loss makes people realize what they had. That's not fair, isn't it?" She stood, crossing to the window. "You've had months to fall for me, Rob. You had our entire pregnancy. You had every night I waited up for you, every morning I made your coffee, every small gesture I made trying to connect. But you didn't fall for me then. You fell for Delia again. You chose her repeatedly, enthusiastically, completely. I was wrong. Yes, you were. And now you're having a different feeling because the consequences are real, because your children are here and your wife is leaving, and suddenly what you threw away looks valuable. But Rob, that's not love. That's loss aversion, that's panic, and I won't stay just to soothe your guilty conscience." The truth of her words hit him like physical blows, but underneath them he felt something else, something real. "You're wrong," he said quietly. "Am I? I'm not falling for you because you're leaving. I'm falling for you because I finally opened my eyes, because I watched you love our children with everything you have despite having every reason to be bitter. Because I see your strength, and your grace, and your kindness, and I realize I've been living next to something extraordinary while treating it like nothing." Lisa turned from the window, and he saw tears in her eyes. "It doesn't matter," she whispered. "Even if it's true, it doesn't change what you did. It doesn't erase the affair or the coldness or the year of marriage where I was invisible to you." "I know," his voice broke. God, Lisa, I know, and if I could go back and do it differently, I would. I'd choose you from the beginning. I'd see you, value you, love you the way you deserved. But I can't go back. All I can do is beg you not to go forward without me. I can't do this. She wiped her eyes. I can't have this conversation again. My decision is made. She started to walk past him, and something in Rob snapped. He couldn't lose her. Couldn't lose them. Couldn't let this family dissolve because he'd been too stupid and selfish to appreciate what he had. He dropped to his knees in front of her. Please. The word came out broken, desperate. Please, Lisa, don't take them. Don't leave me. She stopped, staring down at him with wide eyes. I'm begging you. Tears he'd been holding back for days finally fell. I know I don't deserve another chance. I know I destroyed what we could have had, but please, please don't go. Don't take our family apart. Don't take yourself away from me when I've only just figured out what I lost. Rob, get up. No. He stayed on his knees looking up at her through tears that blurred his vision. Not until you hear me. Really hear me. I've heard you. I've heard your apologies and your promises and your explanations. What more is there? The truth. Jim. He wiped his face with shaking hands. The truth is, I was a coward. I ran from real love and chased a ghost. I had an affair because it was easier than being present. I threw away the best thing that ever happened to me because I was too broken and stupid to recognize it. You've said all this, but I haven't told you why it matters now. He took a shuddering breath. I ended it with Delia that night you collapsed, not because I was caught or because it was convenient, but because holding our children and watching, you loved them despite everything I'd done. You woke me up, Lisa. You showed me what real strength looks like, what real love looks like, what I should have been all along. She was crying now too, silent tears tracking down her face. I watched you survive a pregnancy alone, Rob continued. I watched you carry twins while your husband betrayed you. I watched you nearly die from stress I caused. And you still got up every morning and loved those babies with everything you had. You still showed me grace I didn't deserve. You still tried to build something good from the wreckage I created. That doesn't mean I have to stay. I know, the words came out anguished. I know you don't have to stay. I know I killed whatever we might have had. But Lisa, I'm not the same man who married you. I'm not the same man who had that affair. Watching you be their mother, seeing your strength and your grace, it changed me. You changed me. People don't change that quickly. People change when they finally see clearly. And I see you now. I see everything I missed, everything I threw away, everything I should have treasured from the beginning. Lisa's hands shook as she wiped her tears. Why now, Rob? Why only after everything is broken? Why do I only matter once you've destroyed me? The question hung between them like a blade, cutting through every excuse and explanation. Rob looked up at her, still on his knees, his face wet with tears, and gave her the only honest answer he had. Because love isn't born in perfection, it's born in repentance. Because I was blind, and now I see. Because I can't undo the past. But I'll spend the rest of my life proving my love if you'll let me. Because I'd rather spend every day earning your forgiveness than spend the rest of my life knowing I let you go without fighting. You're only fighting because I'm leaving. No. He shook his head. I'm fighting because I love you. Really love you. Not the convenient love of proximity or the desperate love of consequences, but real love. The kind that sees everything you are and chooses you anyway. The kind that knows I don't deserve you, but wants to become the man who might someday. Lisa's breath hitched. She looked down at him. This man who'd destroyed her, this man who'd finally broken, this man on his knees offering promises that terrified her to believe. I don't know if I can trust you, she whispered. Then don't. He reached for her hands and she let him take them. Don't trust me. Make me earn it. Day by day, choice by choice, moment by moment. I'll spend however long it takes proving that I'm worth the risk. that we're worth the risk. What if you hurt me again? Then I'll hate myself for it. But Lisa, I'm gonna hurt you by accident sometimes. We'll hurt each other. That's what happens when people actually show up for each other. But I'll never betray you again. I'll never choose someone else. I'll never make you feel invisible. His grip tightened on her hands. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not asking you to love me back. I'm asking for the chance to be better, to be the husband you needed all along, to be the partner you deserve, however long it takes, whatever it costs. Alisa looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something she'd never seen before. Not obligation, not guilt, but genuine, terrifying, desperate love. "You broke me," she said finally, her voice barely a whisper. "I know," he replied, tears falling freely now. "And I'll spend the rest of my life putting you back together if you'll let me." The question remained unanswered, hanging in the air between a man on his knees and a woman who'd learned the hard way that promises meant nothing without proof. "Then we start over," she said against his lips, "not as strangers bound by contracts, but as two people choosing each other every single day." He looked up at her with red eyes and said, "Because I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking for the chance to spend the rest of my life earning what I should have given from the start." And in that moment, Lisa faced an impossible choice: protect her heart or risk it one final time. Chapter 10. The Architecture of Beginning. Love built on repentance is the strongest foundation of all, because it's constructed by those who know exactly what they have to lose. Lisa stared down at the man kneeling before her, broken, honest, finally present in a way he'd never been before. Every instinct screamed at her to protect herself, to leave as planned, to choose self-preservation over the terrifying vulnerability of giving him another chance. She'd survived this long by expecting nothing, by building walls around her heart, by learning to live without hope. But she also saw something she'd never seen in Rob's eyes before: genuine remorse, the death of his pride, the birth of humility, the willingness to be vulnerable in a way he'd spent their entire marriage avoiding. "Love isn't born in perfection," Rob said again, his voice raw. "It's born in repentance. I can't undo the past. I can't erase the affair or the pain or the year I made you invisible. But I can promise that every day forward I'll choose you. I'll choose us. I'll be the man I should have been, the father our children deserve, the husband you needed all along." Lisa's tears fell freely now, anger and relief and hope and fear mixing together in a storm she couldn't control. "You broke me," she whispered, the words carrying the weight of every lonely night, every ignored gesture, every moment she'd felt worthless in her own marriage. "I know," he replied, and his acceptance of that truth, not defensiveness, not excuses, just acknowledgement, shifted something in her chest. "And I'll spend the rest of my life putting you back together, if you'll let me." She looked at him for a long moment. This man who'd destroyed her and who now knelt before her, offering something she'd stopped believing in. The easy choice was to leave, the safe choice, the smart choice, but easy and safe and smart had never given her what she actually wanted. "If I stay," she said slowly, "it's not forgiveness. Not yet, maybe not for a long time. I understand. It's a chance. One chance. And if you waste it, if you hurt me again, if you make me feel invisible or unwanted or second best, I'm gone. Permanently. No second chances after this." "I understand," he repeated, his voice steady despite his tears. "And you have to mean it. Not just now while the fear is fresh, but every day. Even when it's hard, even when we fight or when I'm difficult or when life gets complicated. You have to choose me." "I will," he squeezed her hands. "Every single day. I promise." Promises were just words. Lisa had learned that lesson brutally. But looking at his face, destroyed by his own choices, rebuilt by understanding what he'd almost lost, she decided to take the risk. Not because she trusted him. She didn't. Not completely. but because she trusted herself to leave if he failed her again, and because her children deserved to see their parents try to build something real, even if it was built on broken foundations. She pulled him up from his knees, and when he stood, she looked into his eyes and said, "Then let's begin again." Rob's expression crumpled with relief. He reached for her face, his hands gentle and tentative, like he was afraid she might disappear. "I love you. I know I have no right to say it, but I love you." "Then show me," Lisa said. "Don't tell me!" "Show me!" He kissed her then, not out of obligation or guilt or the clinical requirements of their arrangement, but real, raw, desperate love. He kissed her like she was oxygen, like she was home, like she was everything he'd been too blind to see. And Lisa kissed him back. She kissed him with all the hurt she'd carried and all the hope she'd tried to kill, and all the terrifying possibility of what they might become if they actually tried. When they finally broke apart, both of them were crying. "This doesn't fix everything," she said against his lips. "I know. We have a lot of work to do, a lot of healing, a lot of rebuilding trust. I know, and I'm ready, for however long it takes." They stood together in the living room, holding each other for the first time in their entire marriage, and felt the first tentative foundation of something real beginning to form. The weeks that followed were harder than either of them expected. Love built on repentance required constant, conscious choice. Rob had to prove himself daily, not through grand gestures, but through consistent presence, through remembering the small things, through choosing Lisa even when it wasn't convenient. He started therapy, working through the issues that had made him run from love in the first place. He learned to communicate instead of withdrawing, to show vulnerability instead of hiding behind walls. Lisa had to learn to trust again, slowly, carefully, with frequent setbacks. Some days she looked at him and saw only the man who'd betrayed her. Other days, she saw the man he was becoming. They went to couples counseling, navigating the wreckage of their first year together. The sessions were brutal and necessary, forcing them to confront everything they'd avoided. "I need you to understand," Lisa said during one session, her voice shaking, "that I can't just flip a switch and trust you. Every time you're late, every time your phone rings, every time you seem distant, I'm back there, pregnant and alone and taking messages from your mistress." "I know," Rob said, reaching for her hand, "and I'll keep proving myself until those moments don't trigger you anymore. However long it takes. What if it takes years? Then it takes years." The counselor watched them with an expression that suggested she'd seen worse odds succeed. Slowly, painfully, they built something new. Rob learned Lisa's coffee order, something he'd never bothered with before. He left her notes now, small messages of appreciation that she saved in a drawer. He took night feedings without being asked. He noticed when she was struggling and offered help before she had to beg for it. Lisa learned to accept his efforts without suspicion, to believe in his changes incrementally, to risk small pieces of her heart and watch him handle them carefully. They had their first real fight 3 months in, about something trivial that escalated into all their underlying fears. Lisa accused him of pulling away. Rob accused her of never letting him close enough to begin with. They both cried. They both said things they regretted. But then Rob did something he'd never done before. He stayed. He didn't retreat to his study or leave the house or shut down emotionally. He stayed in the room and worked through it until they found resolution. "I'm not going anywhere," he told her afterward, holding her while she cried. "Not now, not ever. We're going to fight sometimes. But I'm not running anymore." And slowly, Lisa started to believe him. The twins grew, thriving in a home that was finally becoming one. Noah started sleeping through the night. Grace discovered her smile. Both of them responded to their parents' presence with joy that reminded Rob and Lisa what they were building this for. One evening, 6 months after their new beginning, Lisa found Rob in the nursery. He'd been putting the twins to bed, and she'd expected to find him finished and back downstairs. Instead, he was sitting in the rocking chair, holding their sleeping daughter, just watching her breathe. "You okay?" Lisa asked softly. He looked up and his eyes were wet. I almost missed this. I almost threw all of it away for nothing. She sat on the floor beside the chair, leaning against his leg. But you didn't. We're here now. Are we? He looked at her with vulnerability she'd never seen in the early days of their marriage. Really here? Or are you still planning to leave someday? Lisa considered the question honestly. I'm here. For real this time. Not because I'm trapped, or because I'm hoping you'll change. But because you did change. And because I'm choosing you too. Every single day, Rob said, echoing their promise. Every single day, she agreed. He reached down to touch her face, and Grace stirred in his arms but didn't wake. Thank you for giving me a chance I didn't deserve. Thank you for becoming someone worth the risk. They sat together in the quiet nursery, their children sleeping peacefully, their marriage finally built on something real. It wasn't perfect. They still had hard days. Lisa still had moments when the old hurt resurfaced. Rob still had to prove himself over and over, but they were choosing each other, daily, consciously, completely, and in that choice, they found everything they'd been missing. Years later, when Grace asked about their story, Lisa would smile and take Rob's hand, the hand that chose her every day, the hand that put her back together after nearly destroying her. Once upon a time, she'd say, your father learned the hardest lesson, that real love isn't found in perfection. It's built in the brave choice to begin again. Some people get love right the first time. We had to learn it the hard way, but that made it stronger, made us stronger. Do you forgive him? Grace would ask, because even as a child, she was perceptive. Lisa would look at Rob, this man who'd broken her and rebuilt her and chosen her every day since, and say honestly, I'm learning too. And that's enough, because forgiveness, like love, wasn't a moment. It was a process, a daily decision to move forward instead of staying trapped in the past. They stayed together, not as strangers bound by duty, but as two hearts finally beating for the same reason. Love that was earned, proven and rebuilt from ruins into something unshakable. And every morning, when Rob made Lisa's coffee exactly how she liked it, and every evening when she waited up for him not out of hope but out of choice, they remembered what they'd almost lost, and they chose each other again. Are you? She stepped closer, close enough that he could smell her perfume, the same one she'd always worn. You look good, Rob. Successful. I always knew you would be. You left me because I wasn't enough. I made a mistake. She said it simply, like she was commenting on the weather. I thought about you, often, wondered what would have happened if I'd stayed. I'm married now, he said it like a shield. I know. I saw the announcement. She's lovely. Delia glanced across the room where Lisa stood talking to another couple, graceful and alone. Does she make you happy? Rob should have lied, should have said yes and walked away. Instead, he said nothing, and his silence answered everything. Delia's smile turned knowing. Have coffee with me, tomorrow, just to catch up. We were friends once, before everything else. Can't we be friends again? I don't think that's a good idea. Please. She touched his arm, and the contact sent electricity through him. One coffee. What's the harm? Everything, he thought. The harm is everything. All right, he heard himself say. One coffee. When he returned to Lisa with drinks, she was studying his face with an expression he couldn't read. You saw someone you know, she said. It wasn't a question. An old friend. The woman in red. He followed her gaze to where Delia stood, watching them with barely concealed interest. Yes. She's beautiful, Lisa said quietly. She's in the past. But the way he said it, the slight catch in his voice, the way his hands tightened on the champagne glass, Lisa heard the truth underneath the words. That night, lying in their separate beds, neither of them slept. The coffee meeting turned into lunch. Lunch turned into long drives where they talked about old times, old dreams, all the what-ifs that had haunted Rob for 5 years. Delia was different now, or pretended to be, softer, more vulnerable. She said she'd been wrong, that she'd chased the wrong things. that she'd thought of him constantly. "I ruined the best thing I had," she whispered one afternoon, sitting in his car in an empty parking lot. "I've regretted it every day since." "Delia, I know you're married. I'm not asking you to leave her. I just needed you to know. I loved you, Rob. I still love you." She kissed him before he could respond. And God help him, he kissed her back. The affair began like a fire, quick, consuming, destructive. Secret meetings became their routine. He'd invent reasons to be away, craft excuses that grew more elaborate with each lie. Delia's apartment became his escape. Her arms, the place where he could forget the hollow house and the hollow marriage and the hollow man he'd become. "Leave her," Delia whispered one night, tangled in sheets that smelled like betrayal. "We could start over. Do it right this time. It's not that simple." "Why not? You don't love her." He didn't argue because it was true. He didn't love Lisa. But he'd made promises, signed contracts, built a life around specific terms. Leaving meant failure, meant admitting defeat, meant proving his father right about his inability to commit. "Soon," he said, which was its own lie. "Let me figure things out." At home, Lisa felt the change instantly. He stopped drinking the coffee she prepared. Stopped noticing the small things she did. His eyes, which had been distant before, now looked through her completely. He came home later, left earlier, invented reasons to be anywhere but with her. She found a receipt one day, folded in his jacket pocket when she was taking clothes to be cleaned. A restaurant they'd never been to together. 2 entrees, wine, dessert. She stared at it for a long time, standing in his closet, breathing his cologne-scented air, understanding finally that she'd already lost what she'd never really had. That night, when he came home, she was waiting in the living room. "Who is she?" Lisa asked quietly. Rob froze in the doorway. "What?" "The woman in red." "From the gala. That's who you've been seeing, isn't it?" He could have lied. Part of him wanted to, but he was too tired, too hollowed out by guilt and desire and self-loathing to craft another story. "It's not what you think." "Then what is it?" She stood, facing him across the space that felt like miles. "Tell me what to think, Rob, because from where I'm standing it looks like you're having an affair." "We agreed this wasn't about love," he said, defensive now. "You knew my heart was gone, to someone in your past, not someone you're actively choosing over me." Her voice cracked. "There's a difference between mourning what you lost and betraying what you have. What do we have, Lisa? Really, a piece of paper, an arrangement? You said yourself you have no right to be upset." "I said I have no right. That doesn't mean it doesn't hurt." She wrapped her arms around herself. "I knew you didn't love me. I accepted that. But I thought we had respect, basic decency, the bare minimum of partnership. Was I wrong about that too?" Rob ran his hand through his hair, stressed and cornered. "It just happened. Delia came back and—" "Delia!" Lisa repeated the name like it explained everything. "The woman who left you. The ghost you've been mourning. She comes back and you just— What, forget I exist?" "You never really existed to me," he said, and immediately wished he could take it back. The words hung between them like knives. Lisa's face went pale. She nodded slowly, absorbing the blow with the grace she'd learned to wear like armor. "Thank you for your honesty." She walked past him, heading upstairs. Her back straight and her heart shattered. Rob stood alone in the living room, listening to her footsteps fade, and wondered when he'd become the kind of man who destroyed good women for the sake of ghosts. But the next morning, when Delia called, he answered. Lisa found a receipt from a restaurant she'd never been to, dated on their supposed business dinner night, and she finally understood. She was fighting a ghost she could never defeat. Chapter: For the weight of realization, Lisa discovered she was carrying 2 lives on the same day. She realized she was losing the one man she'd tried so hard to reach. The nausea started as a whisper, Lisa had blamed it on stress at first, the kind that comes from watching your marriage disintegrate in slow motion, from knowing your husband spends his nights in another woman's arms. She'd wake at dawn feeling her stomach turn, rush to the bathroom, and emerge pale and trembling. "Are you all right, Mrs. Brink?" Oh, the housekeeper asked one morning, finding her gripping the counter. I'm fine. Just tired. But tired didn't explain the dizziness. Tired didn't explain why the smell of coffee, the same coffee she'd prepared for Rob every morning, suddenly made her gag. Tired didn't explain the tenderness in her breasts or the way her clothes felt tighter despite eating less. She knew. On some level she'd known for weeks, but acknowledging it meant confronting a truth she wasn't ready to face. Rob's phone buzzed constantly now. He didn't even bother hiding it anymore. Text messages would light up his screen while he sat across from her at breakfast, and he'd smile at his phone with more warmth than he'd ever shown her face. Something funny? She'd asked once. Just work, he'd lied, not even looking up. She'd watched him type back, his fingers quick and practiced, and knew with absolute certainty that whatever he was writing had nothing to do with work. He took calls in other rooms now, his voice low and intimate, saying things to Delia he'd never said to his own wife. Lisa heard fragments sometimes passing by closed doors. I miss you too. Tonight, if I can get away. She doesn't understand me like you do. That last one had made Lisa stop outside his study, her hand pressed against the wall for support. She'd wondered if she should storm in, demand he stop, fight for a marriage that had never been worth fighting for. Instead, she'd walked away. Because what could she fight for? He'd never loved her, never pretended to. She'd entered this knowing the terms, and now those terms were simply being fulfilled in the cruelest way possible. The morning she finally made the doctor's appointment, Rob had left without saying goodbye. His car pulled out of the driveway before dawn, heading somewhere that wasn't work because it was too early, heading to someone who wasn't his wife because that's where he always went now. Lisa sat in her car in the medical center parking lot for 20 minutes before gathering the courage to walk. Inside, Mrs. Brink. The nurse called her back, smiling with professional warmth. What brings you in today? I think I might be pregnant. The test was quick. The confirmation quicker. Congratulations, the doctor said, pulling up the ultrasound screen. You're about 10 weeks along. Let's take a look and make sure everything's developing well. Lisa lay on the table, gel cold on her exposed belly, watching the screen with detachment. She should feel something, joy, fear, anything. Instead, she felt numb. The doctor moved the wand, studying the screen with focused attention. Then she smiled. Well, this is a lovely surprise. You're having twins. The word hit Lisa like a physical blow. Twins? Yes, see here? The doctor pointed to the screen. 2 heartbeats. 2 perfectly developing babies. Congratulations, Mom. 2. Not 1 life she was bringing into her broken marriage, but 2. 2 children who would grow up watching their parents coexist in silence. 2 children who would learn that love was optional, that marriage was transaction, that home was just a building where people lived separately under the same roof. Are you all right? The doctor asked, noticing Lisa's expression. Yes, sorry, just surprised. She forced a smile. Happy surprised?